Teresa, if we may, I want to go to the UAE piece of this first, because the emphasis from the administration was making US TikTok American. The UAE is an ally of the United States. In defense, for example, there's weapons and other agreements there. But in the context of something that is digital, what do you make of MGX participating as an anchor investor and potential board seat holder of a US TikTok?
Well, I think it's very interesting. Obviously, they have deep enough pockets to be a part of this, which is, kind of part of the deal negotiation. But I have some open questions because there's some open questions about how they feel about social media for their own citizens. And so now we're talking about we're going to have some type of a twin algorithm because ByteDance is still going to have the algorithm, but we're going to have it here in the United States, and we're going to be retraining it on US data. And so I've got a lot of questions around that board seat and what kind of voting rights, what kind of direction, what kind of influence they may have over this sort of digital twin of an algorithm we're going to have in the US and how that retraining is going to happen.
Okay, from a pure technology standpoint, how do you think this is going to work, re the algorithm, or is it going to work at all?
Well, hopefully they've got some really great engineers working on this. So whenever you kind of go into this mode of there's going to be a master copy, and then we're going to have our own local regional copy, but it's going to be essentially the same, except for it's not. We're going to be training it on US data. I end up having a lot of questions, like what's the quality assurance for this? Will it still feel and look the same? I mean, TikTok may lose its hip and cool factor once we take sort of the global piece out of it and start to run it locally. So it'll be very interesting to see what the knowledge transfer will be. I know as part of Project Dallas, TikTok USA has been doing a lot of work to be in compliance with the foreign control, kind of regulations around CFIUS. And so it could be they already have people very well trained up to take the reins of TikTok USA's algorithm. But if they don't, I'm a little worried about how it's going to be tuned. And it may be a little bumpy once we kind of do this split and have this algorithm twin of sort of the master copy, but it has to be retrained.
And let's face it, if they're ByteDance TikTok employees who've been working on Project Texas, who says that ByteDance is going to want them to move to US TikTok? So we have to question what engineering talent follows through, Teresa. I'm also interested in, there's been some Reuters reporting, and Bloomberg's yet to be confirming on it, but the idea that actually ByteDance as a whole has a lot more control than perhaps had been previously thought. Yes, they perhaps give over the algorithm in such way, and it becomes updated and monitored by the likes of Oracle, but they then hold a separate division that will continue to be wholly owned, and they'll control the revenue-generating business operations, such as e-commerce and advertising. Teresa, how does that technically work, and how does that make us understand it from a national security perspective?
Yeah, this is very interesting to me. So I think a couple of things. One, we know the data has been physically separated, but the algorithm itself, the reason why an algorithm like TikTok's was so popular and beat out most US-based social media companies, at least as it relates to Gen Z, Gen A, and even, candidly, other generations, a lot of people have adopted TikTok. And the reason why it's so good is that algorithm is constantly learning. How does it learn? It has to train itself on data and where you come from, where you go to, and all of those things. I don't know how the algorithm stays hip and cool and edgy if it's completely separated from ByteDance. So how does it learn if it becomes a black box of learning? So lots of questions still around how that engineering is going to work and how are they going to set this up. So for example, there is a term called digital twin where you can actually have a full production copy of production and essentially have it be the same and potentially have the data be separated. We're going to have some really smart engineers on the US side of TikTok to really say whether or not there's backdoors, whether or not some of the data itself is truly anonymized, or if we still have a real issue with kind of foreign interests being able to see US-based citizen data.
And Teresa, I follow up with a relatively sensitive political question here, because a lot of anxiety has been put into the potential biases that creep into this algorithm, if it's Chinese, overseen, controlled, whatever you might make of ByteDance. If it's now overseen and controlled by Oracle, what can they put in place to ensure that the users that may or may not migrate over feel comfortable with the control of algorithm by them? And what biases they need to oversee in the same way that we question other parent companies such as Meta and Snap?
I love the question you're asking here. Because of our lack of governance and guardrails over social media platforms, over big tech, as far as understanding the transparency around these algorithms, how they train things. Do I, as a user, get to reset my algorithm? Do I get to see transparency into what's being served up to me or to my children or to my customers if I have a business account? So because we don't have that today, this is a great question, and it has to be asked of all the social media and big tech platforms. And you're right, we don't know potentially who's sitting on that board, not just Oracle, but the other investors. You know, are they going to have sort of a heavy thumb, if you will, on the algorithms and how they work? More to come, obviously.